A T. His product launch, my daughter's boyfriend called me a dinosaur librarian, and his investors laughed at my career. I just smiled, went home and traced his code. His $3.2 million startup collapsed. Before I continue with this story, I need you to understand something. By the time I walked out of that gleaming conference room with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Austin, I already knew exactly how I was going to dismantle everything Marcus Webb had built on stolen code. What I didn't know was whether my daughter would ever forgive me for it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is David Harper. I'm 62 years old, and for the past 37 years, I've been a research librarian at the Austin Public Library's Central Branch. Before that, I spent 4 years getting my master's in library and information science. And before that, I was one of those kids who actually enjoyed organizing things. My childhood bedroom had a card catalog system for my comic books. Yes, I was that kind of kid. People hear librarian and they picture someone shushing teenagers and stamping due dates on paperbacks. That's fine. I stopped correcting people's assumptions about my job sometime around 1995. The truth is, modern research librarianship is as much about database architecture, digital archives, and information systems as it is about books. I've spent the last 2 decades helping researchers, graduate students, and yes, even tech entrepreneurs navigate complex information networks, trace citation trails, and verify sources. I've taught myself Python, SQL, and enough JavaScript to be dangerous. I archive open source projects in our digital collection. I understand GitHub better than most people half my age. But none of that matters when you're standing next to your daughter's boyfriend at his company's product launch party, and he introduces you to his investors as Sarah's dad, the librarian. Still thinks card catalogs are cutting-edge technology. The laughter that followed wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was watching my daughter Sarah, my brilliant 28-year-old daughter who works in digital marketing, force his smile and change the subject instead of defending me. Let me back up 6 months. Sarah met Marcus Webb at a tech networking event in January. She was there representing her marketing firm, and he was pitching his startup, something called Velocity Analytics. By February, they were dating. By March, she'd moved into his downtown loft. By April, I was meeting him for the first time at a family dinner. Marcus was everything I wasn't. 32 years old, Stanford MBA, drove a Tesla, wore expensive sneakers that somehow cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. He had that particular brand of confidence that comes from never being told no, from growing up in Palo Alto with venture capitalist parents and attending the right schools with the right connections. "So, David," he said, that first dinner, cutting into his steak with the kind of precision that felt aggressive. "Sarah tells me, you work at the library. That's nice. Do you enjoy it?" The way he said library made it sound quaint. Like I told him, I made buggy whips for a living. "I do," I said. 37 years and counting. "Wow, same place the whole time." He exchanged a glance with Sarah. "That's really stable. I don't think I could stay anywhere that long. I get restless, you know? Always looking for the next challenge. The next disruption." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Marcus just raised his Series A. $3.2 million. "Congratulations," I said, and I meant it. I'm not one of those people who resent success. "What does Velocity Analytics do?" His eyes lit up the way they always did when someone asked about his company. For the next 20 minutes he explained how his platform used machine learning to analyze customer behavior patterns and predict purchasing decisions. It would revolutionize e-commerce, he said. It was going to change everything. I listened, nodded, asked questions. Some of what he described sounded familiar, like I'd read about similar approaches in the tech journals we subscribed to. But I couldn't place it exactly. When dinner ended, Marcus shook my hand and said, "It was good to meet you, David. You should come by the office sometime. See what real innovation looks like." Sarah didn't say anything in the car ride home, and I didn't ask. Over the next few months, I saw them occasionally. Always at their convenience. Always briefly. Marcus was busy. Sarah was busy. They were building something, she said. I needed to understand that. I did understand. I'd raised her by myself after her mother passed when Sarah was 12. I understood about building things, about sacrifice, about working towards something bigger than yourself. What I didn't understand was why my daughter was slowly disappearing. She used to call me every Sunday, then it became every other Sunday. Then it became text messages with apologetic emojis. When we did talk, Marcus was always there in the background, or she was distracted, or she had to go because they had dinner plans with investors. "You don't like him," she said to me once. In late July, when I'd expressed concern that I hadn't seen her in 3 weeks, I didn't say that. You don't have to say it, Dad. I can tell. I just miss you, sweetheart. That's all. Marcus says you're threatened by successful people. He says it's a generational thing. I let that one go. Picking that fight wouldn't bring her back. Then came the invitation. Velocity Analytics product launch celebration. Read the sleek black card that arrived in my mailbox in mid-September. Join us for an evening of innovation as we unveil the future of e-commerce analytics. Sarah called the day after I received it. You're coming, right? It's really important to Marcus that you're there. He wants to show you what he's built. Something in her voice made me say yes, even though I knew it was a mistake. The launch event was held at one of those modern event spaces in downtown Austin. All exposed brick and Edison bulbs, and craft cocktails with names like The Disruptor and Pivot Point. I wore the only suit I owned. The one I'd bought for Sarah's college graduation. I felt immediately out of place among the skinny jeans and designer blazers. Sarah found me near the entrance. She looked beautiful in a black dress I'd never seen before. Her hair styled in a way that made her look older, more polished. Less like my daughter. Dad, you made it. She kissed my cheek, but her attention was already elsewhere, scanning the room. Marcus is doing the presentation in 20 minutes. There are some investors I need to talk to first, but afterward we'll catch up. Okay. She disappeared into the crowd before I could respond. I found a spot near the back, nursing a beer and watching the tech crowd network. They all seemed to know each other, throwing around terms like growth hacking and user acquisition and burn rate. I felt like an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. Then Marcus took the stage. He was good at this. I'll give him that. He commanded the room with easy charisma, making jokes that landed, building anticipation. His presentation was slick, professionally designed, full of graphs and projections and testimonials from beta users. Velocity Analytics, he announced, represents a fundamental breakthrough in predictive consumer modeling. Our proprietary algorithm analyzes 17,000 unique data points per user, creating behavioral fingerprints that can predict purchasing decisions with 93% accuracy. The room applauded. I watched Sarah near the front, beaming with pride. Marcus continued, clicking through slides that showed the platform's dashboard, its features, its integrations. Something about it nagged at me, a feeling I couldn't quite name, like déjà vu, but more specific. We built this from the ground up, Marcus said, his voice rising with conviction. Every line of code written by our core team, every algorithm optimized for performance. This isn't standing on the shoulders of giants. This is innovation from first principles. That's when I placed it 6 months ago, maybe 7. A graduate student working on her dissertation had asked me to help her track down documentation for an open-source project called Open Commerce Insights. It was a machine learning framework for e-commerce analytics, built collaboratively by developers across 3 continents. Beautiful code, elegant architecture, released under the GPL license, which meant anyone could use it, modify it, build on it, as long as they released their modifications under the same open license and gave proper attribution. I'd helped her find the archive documentation, had even skimmed through some of the technical specs myself because I found it interesting. The architecture Marcus was describing, the 17,000 data points, even the phrase behavioral fingerprints, it was all there in Open Commerce Insights. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe Velocity Analytics had licensed it properly, or maybe I was misremembering. I pulled out my phone and started searching discreetly. The Open Commerce Insights GitHub repository was still active. The last commit had been 3 months ago. I scrolled through the documentation, and there it was. The same architectural approach, the same technical methodology, even some of the same language Marcus had used in his presentation. My hands were shaking slightly as I checked the license. GPL v3. Very clear terms. Very specific requirements about attribution and sharing modifications. I looked up at Marcus, who was now taking questions from investors, confidently fielding inquiries about scalability and competitive advantages in intellectual property protection. Our code is completely proprietary, he said, in response to one question. We filed for patents on 17 separate algorithmic innovations. The room broke into applause again. Sarah was recording him on her phone. Proud girlfriend capturing her boyfriend's moment of triumph. I slipped out before the presentation ended. I needed air. I needed to think. Outside, I stood on the sidewalk and stared at my phone, refreshing the GitHub page like it might tell me I'd been mistaken. But the code was right there. Open source, GPL licensed. And unless Marcus had somehow independently invented an identical system with identical architecture and identical terminology, he'd taken it without attribution, claimed it as proprietary innovation, and was now raising money on that claim. Dad. I turned. Sarah had followed me outside, concern etched on her face. Are you okay? You left in the middle of Marcus's Q&A. I'm fine. Just needed some air. She studied me with the expression she'd had since she was a child. The one that meant she knew I was lying. You hate it. You hate him. You hate this whole thing. I don't hate anything, Sarah. Then why did you leave? This is the biggest night of Marcus's life, and you couldn't even stay for the whole presentation. I wanted to tell her. Right then, standing on that sidewalk with the Texas heat still radiating from the pavement, even though the sun had set, I wanted to explain what I'd found. But I could see in her eyes that she wouldn't believe me. She'd think I was making excuses, finding reasons to dislike him, trying to sabotage her happiness. I'm sorry, I said instead. You're right. I should go back inside. No. She crossed her arms. Marcus was right about you. You can't handle that someone from my generation is actually succeeding. You spent 37 years in the same building, stamping books and alphabetizing shelves, and you can't stand that Marcus built something real in less time than you've been at the same desk. Each word landed like a physical blow. That's not fair, Sarah. Isn't it? Marcus has $3.2 million in funding. He's creating jobs. He's innovating. What have you ever built, Dad? I could have said a lot of things. I could have told her about the digital archive system I designed that was now used by 17 libraries across Texas. I could have told her about the grant proposal I'd written that brought internet access to underserved communities. I could have told her about the countless students and researchers and entrepreneurs I'd helped over 3 decades. Instead, I said, you should get back inside. Marcus will be wondering where you are. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in her face that hurt more than her words. Disappointment. Yeah, she said finally. I should. She went back inside. I went to my car, but I didn't go home. I drove to the library. I had keys, obviously. The building was empty this time of night. Just the security lights and the familiar smell of paper and possibility. I went to my office, powered up my computer, and started digging. Research is what I do. It's what I've always done. And when you know where to look, when you understand how information is connected and referenced and built upon itself, you can trace almost anything back to its source. I started with the Open Commerce Insights repository. I cloned it locally and began examining the code structure. Then I found Velocity Analytics' website, and started analyzing every technical detail Marcus had made. Public blog posts, documentation, that demo video on their landing page. By 2 a.m, I had 43 separate instances where Velocity Analytics implementation matched Open Commerce Insights exactly. Not similar, identical variable names, comment structures, even the spacing and indentation patterns. Marcus hadn't just been inspired by Open Commerce Insights. He'd taken it, stripped out the attribution, rebranded it, and claimed it as his own proprietary innovation. I should have been triumphant. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt sick. Because I knew what I had to do, and I knew what it would cost me. I spent the next 3 days verifying everything. I'm methodical like that, trained to check sources and cross-reference claims. I reached out to one of the core Open Commerce Insights developers, a woman named Patricia Chen, who taught at Carnegie Mellon. I explained what I'd found, sent her the evidence. Her response came back within an hour. This is a blatant GPL violation. We need to take action. She put me in touch with 2 other developers and a lawyer who specialized in open source licensing. They were grateful, angry, determined. They'd spent 3 years building Open Commerce Insights as a gift to the community, and someone had taken it, monetized it, and was now raising millions on the theft. We'll send a cease and desist first, the lawyer explained on our conference call. Give him a chance to make it right. If he refuses, we file suit and contact his investors. How long? I asked. For what? How long until his investors know? If he doesn't comply with the cease and desist, 3, maybe 4 days. News travels fast in the tech world, especially news about IP theft. I hung up and stared at my phone. I had a choice here. I could still walk away, pretend I'd never noticed the similarities. Let Marcus build his company on stolen code. It would collapse eventually. These things always do, but maybe not for years. Maybe long enough for Sarah to realize who he really was on her own terms. Or I could do what I knew was right and lose my daughter in the process. The choice should have been easy, But it wasn't. That night, Sarah called. First time in 2 weeks, she'd initiated contact. "Dad, I want to apologize. I was really harsh the other night. Marcus said I should call you." "Marcus said that?" "Yeah. He feels bad about how things went. He wants to make it right. We want you to come to dinner this weekend. His parents are flying in from Palo Alto, and he wants you to meet them. Like, officially. As family." My throat tightened. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. Can it wait? I'm actually at the office helping Marcus with investor follow-ups. It's been crazy since the launch. 3 more VCs want to meet with us next week. It's important." "Is it about Marcus? Because Dad, I really need you to try with him. I know he's different from what you're used to, but he's brilliant and ambitious, and he makes me happy. Can't that be enough?" I wanted to tell her everything right then. But I could hear the hope in her voice. The plea for me to just accept this. To be happy for her. And I thought about how hurt she would be when this all came out. How betrayed she'd feel. How she might blame me for not warning her sooner. "Dinner sounds good," I heard myself say. "Text me the details." I hung up and immediately called Patricia Chen back. "We need to move faster," I told her. Before the weekend, the cease and desist letter was sent to Marcus Webb in Velocity Analytics on Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, Sarah's phone had been ringing off the hook. By Friday, tech blogs were running the story. By Saturday, 3 of Marcus's investors had pulled their funding commitments. Sarah didn't call me. She didn't text. For 3 days, there was just silence from her end. While I watched the story unfold online, the evidence was damning. Side-by-side code comparisons, documentation showing the original Open Commerce Insights development timeline, testimony from developers who'd contributed to the project, Marcus's own statements claiming proprietary innovation, which made it clear this wasn't an innocent mistake. Tech Twitter was merciless. The think pieces wrote themselves. The dangers of move fast and break things culture. Why open source licensing matters. The Stanford MBA, who forgot about intellectual property. On Tuesday, a week after the launch party, my doorbell rang at 9 in the evening. It was Sarah. Her eyes were red, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing sweatpants, and one of my old UT Austin sweatshirts I'd given her years ago. "Did you know?" she asked. "At the launch party. When you left early, did you already know?" I stepped aside to let her in. She walked past me into the living room, the same living room where she'd done homework at the coffee table, where we'd watched movies on Friday nights after her mother died, where I'd taught her to play chess when she was 7. "I suspected," I said. "I confirmed it that night. And you didn't tell me. Would you have believed me?" She sank onto the couch. "No, probably not." She was quiet for a long moment. "He's been lying to me about everything. The code, the investors, even his parents. Did you know his dad is an adventure capitalist? He's an accountant in Palo Alto, his mom's a teacher." Marcus made up this whole background because he thought it sounded better. I sat down beside her, careful to maintain some distance, unsure if she wanted comfort or just someone to talk at. "The lawyers say he's going to lose everything," she continued. "The investors are suing him for fraud. The open commerce developers might press criminal charges. And She stopped, swallowed hard. "I moved in with him, Dad. I left my apartment. I've been helping him pitch to investors, using my firm's resources, my contacts, people I've worked with for years. And now they all know I was part of this." "You didn't know. Doesn't matter. That's not how it looks. My boss called me in yesterday. They're evaluating my involvement, which is corporate speak for, you're probably fired." "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "Are you?" She turned to look at me directly. "You exposed him. You're the one who contacted those developers. I saw your name in the filings. David Harper, research librarian. Initial source of evidence. Yes. So are you sorry? Or are you glad you were right about him?" It was a fair question. An important question. "I'm not glad," I said carefully. "I'm not glad you're hurting. I'm not glad your career is affected. I'm not glad Marcus turned out to be someone who would lie to you. But I'm not sorry I did what I did. It was the right thing to do. The right thing." She laughed. "But there was no humor in it. He stole some code. That's what this is all about. Some code that was free anyway, that anyone could use. Not like that. Not claiming it as original work, not raising millions of dollars by lying to investors. But you didn't have to be the one to report it. You could have let someone else figure it out. No one else was going to figure it out, Sarah. I'm probably one of maybe 12 people in Austin who would have recognized what Marcus did. This is what I do. I trace information. I verify sources. I understand how intellectual property works in the digital age. I saw something wrong, and I had the knowledge to prove it. So what? You're a hero now? You saved the tech world from the bad man? No. I'm just someone who couldn't ignore what I knew. She stood up abruptly, pacing. You don't understand what you've done. Everyone I know. Everyone in my professional circle. They all know. They know my boyfriend built a company on stolen code. And they know my dad is the one who brought it down. Do you know what that makes me look like? Either I'm complicit or I'm stupid. Those are the only two options. There's a third option, I said quietly. That you're someone who was lied to by someone you trusted. That's not stupidity. That's not complicity. That's just being human. She stopped pacing. Her back to me. Her shoulders were shaking. I loved him, Dad. Or I thought I did. I don't even know anymore. Was any of it real? Did he ever actually care about me? Or was I just useful? Good connections? Good network? Good cover? I stood and went to her. Put my hand on her shoulder. This time she didn't pull away. I don't know, I admitted. I'd like to think some of it was real. But people who lie about one thing usually lie about many things. She turned and buried her face in my shoulder. And for the first time since she was a teenager, my daughter cried in my arms. We stood like that for a long time. Eventually, she pulled back. Wiped her eyes with the sleeve of the sweatshirt. I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest. Always. Did you do this because it was the right thing to do? Or did you do this because you wanted Marcus gone? I thought about that carefully. Both. I said finally. I wanted him gone because I saw how he talked down to you. How he made you feel like you had to apologize for me. For my career. For the choices I've made. I didn't like who you were becoming around him. But I wouldn't have acted on that alone. I acted because what he did was genuinely wrong. Those developers spent years building something for the community, and he stole it. The investors gave him millions, based on a lie. That's fraud. That matters. She nodded slowly. I quit my job before they could fire me. I'm moving back home for a while. If that's okay. I can't afford my apartment without Marcus splitting the rent, and I don't have the energy to fight with him about the lease. Your room is exactly how you left it. With the posters of boy bands I liked in 8th grade, I'm afraid so. She almost smiled. Dad? Yeah? Thank you. For being someone I can come home to. Even when I'm stupid. Even when I yell at you and say terrible things. You're never stupid. You're human. We all make mistakes. The important thing is what you learn from them. She stayed that night in her old room. I heard her crying through the wall around midnight, and had to stop myself from going to her. She needed to process this on her own. The next morning I made breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast. The same breakfast I'd made her every Saturday when she was growing up. She came downstairs looking exhausted but calmer. What happens now? She asked, picking at her eggs. To Marcus, I mean, legally hard to say. He'll probably settle with the open commerce developers to avoid criminal prosecution. The investors might get some of their money back, but probably not much. His company is finished. And me? You rebuild. You find a new job. You move forward. You're 28, Sarah. You have time to recover from this. Do you ever regret it? She asked suddenly. Staying at the library all those years? Never chasing something bigger? I considered that. No. I built something that mattered. Maybe it wasn't flashy. Maybe it didn't come with venture capital funding or TechCrunch articles. But I helped thousands of people over the years. I preserved knowledge. I connected people to information they needed. That's not small. That's not insignificant. Marcus said you were washed up. I know. He was wrong. I know that too. She was quiet for a moment. I need to learn how to value the right things. I got so caught up in his world, in the excitement of it all, that I forgot what actually matters. That's not an easy lesson. Some people never learn it. Did Mom know? About the library stuff. The database work? All the technical things you do? She knew. She was proud of it. She used to joke that I was the most interesting person no one had ever heard of. Sarah smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. I like that. The most interesting person no one had ever heard of. It's not a bad way to live. Over the following weeks I watched Sarah put herself back together. She landed a new job at a smaller marketing firm, one that valued integrity over flash. She started calling me again on Sundays. She came over for dinner on Wednesdays. Marcus disappeared from social media. I heard through the tech community grapevine that he'd moved back to California. Was working for his father's accounting firm. The lawsuits were settled quietly. The open commerce developers got a public apology and a licensing agreement that ensured proper attribution. The investors got a painful but important lesson about due diligence. 3 months after everything fell apart, Sarah and I were having dinner at my house when she said, "I want to learn what you do. The research stuff. The database work. Will you teach me?" Why? Because I realized something. What Marcus did was only possible because most people don't understand how digital information works. They don't know how to verify sources, trace code origins, check licenses. If more people had your skills, people like Marcus couldn't get away with what he did. So I taught her. We spent Saturday mornings at the library, and I showed her how to navigate GitHub repositories, understand licensing terms, trace information lineage. She was a quick learner, saw connections I hadn't thought of, asked smart questions. "You know what's funny?" she said one Saturday, scrolling through an open source project's commit history. "Marcus was right that you taught me something. Just not what he thought." "What's that?" "That real strength isn't about being the loudest or the flashiest or the most confident. It's about being thorough. Being honest. Being someone people can trust. You spent 37 years building that reputation. That's worth more than any startup valuation." I didn't trust myself to speak for a moment. "Also," she continued, grinning now, "I'm pretty sure you could run circles around most tech bros when it comes to actual technical knowledge. They just never bothered to ask." "Well, I do try to maintain an air of mystery." She laughed, and it sounded like home. 6 months later, Sarah landed a job at a digital rights organization, working on open source advocacy and licensing compliance. She uses the research skills I taught her every day. She's happy. More importantly, she's herself again. We had coffee last week, and she told me about a case she was working on, another startup that had violated GPL terms. "I thought about you," she said, "about how you could have just let Marcus get away with it. How you risked our relationship to do the right thing. I don't know if I told you this, but that takes courage. I'm not sure I have." "You have it," I told her. "You proved that by walking away, by rebuilding, by choosing work that matters over work that pays. I learned from the best." As I sit here now, in my office at the library, surrounded by 37 years of accumulated knowledge and connections, I think about what Marcus said at that dinner all those months ago, about being restless, about always looking for the next challenge, the next disruption. He was right that I stayed in one place. But he was wrong about what that meant. I didn't stay because I lacked ambition. I stayed because I was building something that mattered. Every database I organized, every researcher I helped, every student I taught to verify sources and trace information, that was all part of something larger than myself. A foundation, a legacy. Marcus built his company in 18 months, and it collapsed in 2 weeks. I built my career over nearly 4 decades, and it's still standing. Still helping people, still making a difference. And my daughter, the most important thing I ever built, she's standing too. That's what Marcus will never understand. Real strength isn't measured in how fast you rise. It's measured in what remains when the lights go out and everyone stops watching. My name is David Harper. I'm a research librarian, and I wouldn't trade what I do for all the venture capital in Silicon Valley, because the strength of what you build depends on the integrity of your materials. And I've always used the best.